we want to kind of add our figure in here, we'll try that first before we try our deer. And we have two versions here. And one version, if we wanted the figure to be more dominant in the main subject or an important subject, we make him larger. And if he was larger, he'd probably be in this area that's sunlit. So we have a couple versions here where he's sunlit. And if we see here, we did one where he's in shade as well. That way we have that option later on when we're doing our painting. I kind of want him to be not the main subject, just something kind of small that you notice after you look around the painting a little more. So we're going to make him small. I want it to be like he's kind of walking home through this pathway between the trees. So really about here is where I was imagining him, and that area is in shadow. So we're going to go ahead and use our version with him in shadow. We don't have to worry about shapes of light and dark so much like we do with this picture here. So we'll just make those colors and kind of paint him in and see how that looks. Here's the stage. I took a photo of the actual painting and layered a few stills made from our video shoot. Our final one looked most natural and had the proper perspective for the farther distance. Let's start out with just a kind of a simple base color and kind of see in our pictures that he's very small. So let's just very small figure. We can't get into details too much at all. We'll just use our burnt sienna and white pretty much. Can't remember what sizes that we might want to try. And you'll be surprised how many things are the same. They're paint colors, like this shirt's kind of a burnt sienna color. And that's, what we paint with. Other things, the clothes and just dyes and stains for the frames for our paintings. It's all the same source. So remember that when you're trying to match something. A lot of times you might have that color for a dye or a stain for something in your paints. So it's mostly that. We're just going to kind of work dark with this. I'll just put something kind of loose on here. And we'll go back over it after that dries. Do little highlights, lighter colors. You see he's got that smoker that we saw our friends using. He asked them, well, what would be a good way to depict you? Just about all of them say, with a painting, like with a smoker, doing the smoke. So that's something kind of exclusive to them that they want to use. And smoke color, it's pretty much just whatever your sky color is. Just use that, whatever your atmosphere or sky color is. That's the light temperature that's shining on this and becomes more like a solid surface that way. It's shining on there. So moonlight is almost just the color of whatever your moon is if you're trying to do smoke out of a chimney, say at night. So let's fine tune this, but I kind of have to let it dry. And I can, something so small, I guess, we can't possibly paint any details really. So we just paint it a little sloppier, and I can actually probably define it better wiping off stuff. Let's get like a base coat on there first, have that dry. And we can kind of try to refine it a little bit more on top of the second coat, wiping off. So that's how you paint a fine line and things like that. And more by wiping off to create the shape than painting it in the first place. And keep in mind when we talk about drying our painting with the drying lamps between coats, it's just a bulb in these clamp lamps, but they can radiate some heat, so you have to be careful. And if you're not sure, how warm it should be, just put your hand right in front of the painting itself And it should just maybe feel like you have your hand out in the sun on a nice warm day, you know, not where it's cooking. We're not trying to barbecue the thing. Oh, this one's done. I don't know, those grill marks, they're looking pretty good. If you have a larger painting, you might use 2 or 3 of those. Or put smaller paintings in a box to prevent any dust and place it on a warm heat duct in your house. Or prop the painting high above a heat vent. And since rigid supports don't expand and contract so easily like canvas, it's best to heat both sides together if using lamps. Otherwise, if the painting gets too warm, it could warp and stay that way. But no matter what, whenever possible, make rigid supports uniform on both sides by painting both sides the same amount in some fashion. This also helps prevent warping from changes in temperature or humidity. And if you do these things, you know, if you use the oil paints, you paint thinner coats like we do, it'll dry within an hour and you get a lot more painting done. Well, here's why I took a break. I kind of wanted to really see what these flowers would look like before we went ahead with them. So I kind of composed something with our computer program and took some of our reference pictures and pieced this together. And it just gives me a good idea what flowers could be like. So kind of bing, 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 bing. We already got some flowers in the picture. And oh, look at there. We even have our star, the bee, showing up. I wanted to try this because I really wasn't sure, by making the flowers large enough to see a bee, is it going to be too large for our perspective and the size of the grass? It might look kind of silly, but we got to see what it really looks like, and I think we're going to do okay with that. So I'm just going to go ahead with that. While we took our break, I added a few details more, a little more highlights, a little more color in the green on the tree, and detailed the bark a little bit better. So now that's done. But you know, we're using the computer a lot, and you might think, oh, what if I'm not a computer nerd? What do you do to try out ideas? Well, number one, we put a coat of alkyd medium once something's dry to kind of seal that coat, and then we could go around painting on there if we want and not mess that up too much. Well, we have a little kitty here. Come on up here. She wants to watch while we talk. So you can kind of do that. It protects your underneath coat. And you're thinking, well, what if I don't do that or have that? And what if I have acrylics maybe? Well, here's a good thing that I do sometimes and other artists do. This is called acetate. What it really is just plastic.
And this is an example here where I've got a photograph, and then I'll put a piece of acetate, clear acetate, which you can buy in a roll, and I just do a painting, an oil painting, right on top of the acetate. And I try out my composition however I think it's going to look best.
And this is actually just the plastic when you buy those sleeves to do book reports. You just cut it out and you have this plastic, and you can reuse this a bunch of times if you just wipe your paint off. But you have your painting in its present state, so you really get to see what it looks like. Just paint right on there, and you can really see how big things should be or not. We can even get into quite good detail because you see right through it. And obviously, it's not going to make any harm. Now let's try one more use for our acetate. So here we have our plastic sleeve, and we can try painting out one of our subjects just to give a little better impression what it might look like without them on here. One beekeeper vanished. There he is. Now he's gone. Later, we'll see the actual figure paint out and how the same trick helped us try out a second type of tree as well. Blooming apple trees in the springtime. Tree species that greatly depends on bees and our use of beehives.
A couple other methods include making a black and white printout of either your reference photo or a photo of your painting stage. Then try drawing your ideas right on the printout. Be sure to see all our shows for the many ways we try out ideas before we spend the time painting them.
So there's a couple ways you can kind of try out your ideas on your existing painting without messing it up or doing drawing and sketching, which isn't quite the same. So we'll take this off and we'll start putting in our flowers and finish up our last subjects. Right, Kitty? Okay, you get out of here.
All right, let's start our flowers by making an off-white with white. You want to put a little blue and orange in there just to gray that down. And we'll just fill in just the basic shapes of the flowers for now, according to our reference. This is a general guide. We'll worry about painting form later.
When making changes is easy, you're much more likely to try out ideas you hadn't first thought of. Researching an apple orchard really inspired me to change the trees in this painting to something entirely different, and it's very appropriate for our main subject, the beehives. Here we ended up with less flowers on the foreground, replacing that with springtime apple trees just full of flowers. Apple trees in spring look entirely different and are rarely seen in this way, full of blooming flowers and not apples. I also decided to remove any sign of human activity by replacing our walking figure with a distant grazing deer. Our full shows include every step in making these two versions of the same basic composition.